Next item on our agenda, another routine review of the flow accelerated corrosion program. This is a program for monitoring the effects on piping of an accelerated corrosion phenomena that occurs when you have a corrosion layer on carbon steel piping that is subject to erosion by a fluid, a hot fluid or a mixed fluid of liquid and steam. Can cause a rapid wall thinning and a sudden rupture of pipe. It actually many years ago at the Surrey Power Station, there was a rupture and killed many people, 3 people, I believe it was, caused by this type of phenomenon that probed the industry to follow it. So that's done through proactive inspections, looking at different sections of piping in the plant that are susceptible. Many of these sections have been replaced over the years with material other than carbon steel that's not as susceptible to the phenomena. So the number of inspections has wound down. It's also wound down because with the cessation of operations, the inspections don't need to be completed anymore to assure it's good for 2 or 3 more years. But they did still have, in this case, 2 inspections they did during Unit 1 outage, and there are areas that cannot be modeled or tracked typically in the usual fashion, so they are regularly inspected, but there were no repairs needed at the areas they inspected. So the conclusion was the program continues to be effectively managed. I do think this is one of several examples that we run across, and we'll start doing this regularly, where here's a program that if for some reason the path forward is changed and a license renewal is pursued, there is going to be a lot of work to get this program back into the inspection necessary for continued operation, because a lot of things have been stopped inspections because they don't need to do it, inspections in 2 or 3 years. But if we're going to operate 4 or 5 years out, all of a sudden there's a lot more inspections that now need to be done to make sure this is managed. So this is kind of one of those example areas. We also asked and provided with 2 lists, the list of capital projects submitted to the committee, but that were not approved by the committee, and the list of capital projects that were submitted and were approved. And that was very informative to us. Just some examples of the first category, projects proposed but not approved. And these are topics we have touched on in the work of a committee before. The first would be the main annunciator system in the control room. There are aging issues and parts procurement issues with that system that were presented to this committee with the possibility of replacing that system. It was decided to and investigated and decided to implement a spare parts bridging strategy to make sure that they obtained enough spare parts to be able to make that system last until 2025. And that was successfully, they were able to plan that out and come up with that spare parts approach to the system, which then replaced the need to upgrade that system or replace it. So that project to replace the main annunciator system was ultimately not approved, but the need was met by this spare parts bridging strategy. So that's one example of a project that was proposed and not approved. The second would be the Unit 2 reactor coolant pump vibration monitoring system.
Right.
We're familiar that Unit 1, they put in a new system with the intent of putting it on Unit 2, but there was some trouble with the system inside containment that difficult to analyze exactly what was going on, but was ultimately considered possibly an environmental issue with the cards and the environmental, and they're experiencing inside containment. And essentially at that point, this committee and the station management decided that they would not replace the Unit 2 system with the new system, that there was more trouble than it was worth, and that they would be able to make the other unit system last to the end of the life without being replaced. So those are just some examples of projects that have been considered and canceled.
Rick, you've just cited 2 examples, and there are a lot more of the sort of thing that if a decision were made to extend the operation beyond the current shutdown, there are a long list of things like that each individually will require attention.
Yes, I agree 100%.
I mean, it's not rocket science, but it is in fact a list that has to be addressed one by one.
Right. And I was actually going to make that exact point. I think this is another example. We talked yesterday briefly about if this decision is made to change the path forward, we would need to go back and review a lot of our old open items lists that have been closed and see if items would need to be reopened. I think we'd also need to go back and review all of our reports, probably since 2016, and look for items like this that now, things the committee have reviewed in the past, and now our perspective might be changed upon. And we might be concerned that that needs to be put back in the system and something done different for the future.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of,
clearly the plant would do that, and we would review all those items.
Right.
And then we'd want to go and see what we thought about them separately.
Right.
As well.
Right.
That's
But if we weren't aware of the fact that the Unit 1 reactor coolant pump vibration monitoring system wasn't installed, we went back and reviewed our reports, we'd find where we looked at Unit 2 and knew they had problems. And
the other one would,
we'd say, wait, what's happening with Unit 1?
Right.
Plus, are you going to fix Unit 2 now? What those kind of questions. We would have a lot of work, a lot of activity like we were talking about yesterday.
I guess my question is, in the event that some other decision is made at some level, regardless of the intentions of PG&E, are there things that would have been done differently during this maintenance period if the plant were going to be having an extended life? What would have been done differently? And how would your committee be evaluating these differences and the different requirements of such a situation? Thank you.
I'll take a quick answer at that, and then let Dr. Budnitz give his thoughts. The answer is yes. I think there would have, and I'm speaking in conjecture, not for PG&E itself, but clearly from my perspective, if PG&E had known they weren't going to shut down in 24 and 25, there would have been a larger scope in the last maintenance outage. For example, we're talking about the flow accelerated corrosion inspections. There would have been a larger scope of flow accelerated corrosion inspections because they would be looking to have the plant run longer. And I think there's a lot of other things about that, and that's part of the point we've been talking about. And the point we've been taking is if this decision is changed, there has to be a review of all those things and a plan put forward for how to recover that lost opportunity and move forward safely. And it is not something, the amount of work should not be underestimated that's involved in doing that.
Yeah, Eric, thank you for that comment. This is Bob Budnitz. I want to amplify what Rick said just with one simple thing. If this decision goes that way, the scope of the plant's work will change dramatically in the next year or two in dozens of different areas. In fact, almost every area of the plant's work on safety and so on. And the corresponding work by our independent committee would change dramatically too, because there's a whole lot of stuff to review that we will undertake. We ourselves have thought about that scope already. But of course we have to be reactive in the sense of whatever happens is outside our control. We're just going to watch it. But your observation is 100% right. The scope of activities over the last 5 years at the plant would have been different right along, and it's going to continue to be that way. It's a concern to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, and the plant's looking at it, the NRC is looking at it, we're looking at it, people are looking at it. We're expecting that'll be a big change. Thank you.